My name's Emily Martin, and I'm taking you behind the scenes to talk to equine artists from around the world. This is Artist Unlocked. Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back. We are on the season 2 finale of Artist Unlocked. It is kind of amazing to believe that we're here somehow. I started this back in May, and so now somehow we're in November, and this is sort of the culmination of this idea that I had that I was able to turn into a fully functioning show. So I'm a little bit nostalgic right now. Thank you guys so much for all of your support and just sharing and your kindness to the artists that I've hosted. It's been such a blessing to host this show. And not to sound like it's over, because it's definitely far from over. I do plan to have a season 3, but the show will be taking a little bit of a hiatus. I really have a lot of ideas of things I want to do. I want to update the graphics, just increase the production quality of the show. Obviously I have to interview new guests, things like that. So the show's going to take a few month break. I'm going to spend the winter really diving in deep and getting everything together so that I can bring you a season 3 sometime probably in the spring. Thank you to everyone also who entered my giveaway. I have not forgotten about you. I promise in the next week I will be announcing the giveaway winners, and I'll be in touch with those winners as to getting your prizes. I've been really behind on things. I feel like I sound like a broken record. I only have a few more weeks left of college, and I'm literally a day out from filming my capstone short film. It's a 4-day shoot. It's like 12+ hour days. I have to get up at 3:30 in the morning tomorrow. So needless to say, I am exhausted, and I've been doing my best. You see, I can't even talk. I've been doing my best to keep the episodes on track for you guys, so I apologize for my absence a little bit on the Instagram front of things, but just know that the winners will be drawn for that, and I will absolutely let you guys know who wins. Without further ado, let me introduce our finale guest, Darynn of DeeJayBe Studios. I'm sure you all know and love Darynn. She's an amazing artist, and her account has really blown up in the last little bit here. Her YouTube tutorials have helped so many artists, including me, get tips and tricks to better their work, and it's just really amazing to see what she puts out. I know that was kind of a lot of rambling in the beginning, so without further ado, let's get into the episode. The few people out there that don't know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself, your studio name, all that good stuff.
Okay, so I am DeeJayBe Studios on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, but my real name is Darynn Bednarchuk, and that's complicated to spell, so usually people just call me DeeJayBe. And I've been model horse customizing for 3 years now, but I've been collecting for probably 10 or 11, so I've been in the hobby for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you put a video out recently on your YouTube channel that kind of describes your process and like your journey with collecting and how that kind of spawned into the art side of things. But go ahead and walk me through that. What was that like?
Yeah, so that video really explains the whole thing start to finish. Basically, as a young kid, I got into Grand Champion models, and then that graduated into Briars as I got a little bit older. And then I did dabble in customizing when I was a teenager, but I was really more focused on traditional art and being a flat graphite artist. And it wasn't until I pursued a career in 3D animation that I realized I hated the computer and doing digital art. So I needed something really physical and hands-on, because I was getting frustrated with just sitting on the computer and working in that kind of medium. And models just kind of seemed like the best thing to jump into, because it was horses and no one could say like, hey, you're drawing too many horses. And it was very physical, and like sculpting is kind of like on the side of 3D modeling and all that. So it just kind of seemed like the good fit, and I was able to get the supplies because I was living in the city at the time. And then it just kind of took off from there with the Instagram, for sure.
Yeah, your account has definitely exploded. It's been cool to watch.
It's crazy. I never could have imagined it going this big.
Yeah, well, you're super talented, so you absolutely deserve it.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm kind of curious because I think a lot of artists in the hobby come from an artistic background, at least in some way, and it's interesting how that translates into the art side of things. So, is 3D, obviously you did 3D animation, so is 3D where your favorite, traditional art is, or do you like to do the 2D art more, or like what's your favorite?
I'm definitely not a digital art person. So I've never like grasped onto using a tablet to draw or like working. Like I like working in the computer, but when it comes to drawing or painting or sculpting, I definitely prefer doing it physically. So I've always liked just using a pencil or sculpting with actual clay versus trying to learn Mudbox or ZBrush. So I do like them, but I just don't find that I do that as much. So I definitely am more of the traditional artist. Your question there was asking not really that. What was the question again?
You're good. No, I'm just curious to learn about how you even came to learn that the digital side wasn't for you. Like, did you get all the way through school before you realized that, or did you realize it like halfway through?
Well, I kind of knew it going in. It was kind of that, I think when you're young and everyone is pressuring you to pick a career and like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And so I'm like, well, I'm really only good at art. Like, I don't think I'm a doctor. I don't think I'm a dentist. I don't think I'm really good with people, but I can be creative. So that was kind of the obvious path to take. And like people were warning me, don't be a freelance artist because you won't make enough money and it'll be really hard to sustain yourself. So the kind of ideal career is animation because it's artistic. There's a huge industry, especially in Canada. It's in Vancouver. So it was like, if I just move to the city, I can jump right into a career that's a consistent pay and like it's a job. It's not like freelancing. So I did go through 2 years of school and then 2 years of working in the industry before realizing that it just wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
And it was really hard too, because you're working 8 hours a day on the computer and being 100% creative, like you're outputting creative work. And being the kind of artist that I had a hard time separating my own personal art from my work. And so going home after being creative for 8 hours a day, it's really hard to push yourself to do another drawing or another customized flyer or like a video or like something more creative, right? So it's kind of like I need a semi-artistic job, but not like super like brain concentrating creativity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm a video editor, and
Oh.
so while that's like technical, it's also very creative. So I totally get what you mean, because there are times it's like you work like 8 hours and then you come home and you're like, do I really have it in me to like do more art right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So did you go to like film school, and then was there like a concentration for animation?
Yeah, so I did 2 years because when I originally went in, I wasn't sure that I really wanted animation to begin with. So they kind of had a first year program that gave you a taste of film, a taste of animation, taste of acting, writing. We kind of like, it was everything combined. And then you could pick after you finish that year what like specialized course you wanted to go into. So I was registered into animation because I thought that that's what I wanted to do. And when I finished the first year, I said, that is what I want to do. Even though like I wasn't totally in love with it, I was going to try it because it was the most obvious route, because the filmmaking route was kind of more crazy work hours, and the stories I had heard, it just didn't really sound for me. But animation ended up being kind of the same. So I don't work in animation anymore. I actually quit that job and moved to a smaller town because the city was bothering me too.
Yeah, I could never live in this city.
No, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're into horses, because they're too expensive down there.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I need like the open space, especially now with like the pandemic. I'm so glad I don't live in a city, because
I know.
that would just
Like life hasn't really changed with the pandemic because I'm still like with my horse and my family and all the animals and everything. So it's like I couldn't imagine being in a 400 square foot apartment right now.
No, I would lose my mind. Do you feel like your background with going through school that way, do you feel like that's helped you now that you do the YouTube videos that you do?
100%. A lot of what the school taught me was to grind hard. So you're in like 13 classes. Like it was a very condensed schooling as well. So it's not a normal university. So it was an entire year program, and you had 2 weeks for Christmas, 1 week in the summer, and like 1 week mid-year. So you're not going to school for 4 months and then getting like a 4-month summer. You're in school for a whole year, and like a weekend or a holiday, that's like, sweet, I don't have class, I get to work at the school all day.
Yeah, exactly.
So it taught me to like pressure myself, push myself to like output more content than I was ever capable of before I went to school. Like I was very lazy and just like, nah, do whatever you need to do. But now I'm like concentrated, and I'm a business person almost, of like, I need to get this done.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Which is helpful,
that definitely helped.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful for freelance, any type of freelance too, because if you don't have like the drive and the ability to like push yourself to work, then you know you're never gonna make it. I think that translates into like the hobby side of things too. If you're gonna make a business out of it, obviously like there's creativity, and you can kind of, especially if you get to a certain level, you can kind of take on things as you want to, but there's still like a certain level of needing to push yourself.
Mm-hmm, for sure. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And I know like a lot of people in this hobby, they do work a full-time job, and this is just a hobby. So it's kind of that weird realm of deciding if you want it to be a job or not, because it does turn into a job, and then you have to do it every day, and you have to push yourself. And it's not always easy to push yourself creatively if you're not feeling it, right?
Yeah. Has that been a struggle for you? Because I know you recently quit your job, and so this is what you're doing now full time, right?
Not quite. I quit my animation job and moved back in with my parents for a little bit, but that situation has changed, and now my boyfriend lives here, so I live on my own. I'm working still, but I'm working part-time, so only 3 days a week, and that's basically just to pay the rent and like my groceries and everything. And then the models are 4 days a week, and that's like as much time as I can put into them. Eventually I would like to quit my job completely, but I want it to be really solid with the YouTube and the Amazon and everything before I take that step, because it's a serious step.
Yeah, that's a big step. Do you feel like having the hobby and the art side be more of a job, do you struggle with your creativity because of that?
At times I think it's hard to like sit here all day, and like I'll sit down and I'm just not feeling in the mood today. But for the most part, it's pretty much all I think about and all I really want to do. So, and I do find like having a part-time job kind of pushes me harder, because then it's like when I actually have my 4 days off, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to like go full into this, because I've had my 3 days where someone else had my time, and now I have my time to do what I want to do.
Right.
So I don't find it too bad, just because I really enjoy it. But I could see it if it was completely full time, and to pay the rent and to pay the bills, it may get a little bit daunting, because then I have to do it or I won't be able to pay my bills, basically, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. So going back a little bit, what was your process like when you started customizing? What did you start off with, and how has it progressed to what you do now?
So back when I was a teenager, I tried a bit of everything, and it went horribly. I was not good at all. And I remember looking at people's work and being like, how did they do that? Like, it just doesn't work like that for me. So I quit on it pretty quickly because it wasn't satisfying enough. But when I recently restarted, it was primarily painting, and I had started with just pastels because that's just what I had in my house. And then I had always really wanted an airbrush. And so when I had sold enough pastel customs, I had enough money to buy an airbrush. And so I really got into that and the painting side of that. And then that formed into the sculpting side of things and drastic customizing again. And then now that recently has been forming into original sculpture and kind of expanding basically that sculpting side of things. Because originally I was only painting like the briar molds as they were, and now I'm finding it more satisfying to actually customize the nose or the eyes or the body proportions or the hair, so that it's a one-of-a-kind piece versus just a repaint.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm the same way. I get a lot more satisfaction out of something that it's like, I've made this whole thing like basically from
Yeah.
scratch.
And then you can post the before and after, and people are like, whoa, you actually changed something, right? It wasn't just
Yeah.
like, oh, I bought this horse and I painted it. Okay, cool. But
Yeah. But what did
yeah.
you actually do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think airbrushing too can be something that people are a little bit intimidated to start. It has like a pretty big startup cost. And then I think in talking to some of the other airbrushing artists, I think there's a lot of like misconceptions about airbrushing, about like it being messy or it just being like really hard to do or to clean. And I think like the videos that you make and some of the other videos that people are making really kind of destigmatize it. I know it has for me, because I'm looking into getting one for just base coats, because I primarily work in oils, and it takes so long to build up the color with just oils. So yeah,
I definitely found with the airbrush that I enjoyed it more because it is a fast medium.
Yeah.
So you can cover a model in like 20 minutes instead of like all day pasteling layers or oil painting layers. It's not messy at all. That's the biggest misconception. But it definitely is a pain in the butt to clean. And they clog a lot, and you have to know what you're doing so that you don't wreck it, because I have wrecked them before. But I think if you enjoy it enough, the cleaning really doesn't bother you, because like I love using the airbrush, so I don't mind cleaning it after every color that I use. And like, I'm impressed that you use oils, because oils terrify me and I hate them. I don't like that they take so long to dry.
Oh, that is the other thing that drives me crazy too. I'm so impatient, so I have to like work on them in batches and be able to like set it aside, because yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, those oil artists, I'm not that kind. I'm too impatient.
If you don't mind sharing, by the way, also like just a quick little disclaimer, like I know some people are like more protective of certain things in their process than others, so if there's anything we talk about that you don't want to share, just let me know. It's totally cool.
Okay.
How often, like, what is the cleaning process for your airbrush like? Because I feel like people don't necessarily talk about that side, and if you don't do it right, like you said, you can totally screw it up.
Yeah, so I've learned a lot because I've been airbrushing for 2 years now, I think. So I have the Iwata Eclipse, which is a pretty basic beginner brush, and now I've recently graduated to the Micron, which is like a $500 airbrush, and you really can't screw that brush up because it's so fine and delicate. So I have mashed needles, I've mashed nozzles before, like I've done it all that you're not supposed to do. But basically, if you just run a cleaning solution after each color, and then you make sure when you're done painting, you take the airbrush fully apart and clean it properly, then you're always ready to go the next time you're ready to paint. And if at any point you're getting bubbles or anything weird, you're gonna have to take it apart and clean it good, because it's just gonna screw up your whole paint job. And it's really hard to correct bubbles or overspray or anything that happens on that model. You're basically going to have to strip it and restart. So that's kind of the crappy part about it. You really have to understand like when it feels like it's going to spray something weird.
Yeah.
So it's just practice, but it's not too complicated. I've recently found that rubbing alcohol is your best friend. It takes off paint instantly, and that's been a really good lifesaver recently, because I think I've had a lot of buildup in the airbrush over the years of not cleaning it quite right when I was first learning, and now it's pretty much just smooth with the alcohol. So
good enough.
Yeah.
I'm like both putting these tips out there for people and also like taking in that information myself, because I know if I get one day, like I'm gonna want to make sure I do it right.
Yeah, well, I hope to make a video on that. Actually, it's just a really daunting video because there's a lot of airbrushers out there, and I've gotten some flack on my videos before, like, you're doing this wrong, but I'm like, I don't really know, it's working for me, so.
Right. It works for you, why? Yeah. So pivoting a little bit, this could be related to the artist side of the hobby or just in general. What is your favorite and least favorite part of the hobby?
Favorite and least favorite. My favorite is definitely the community, like being able to post online and have people react to your work and then making like actual friend connections. Like I personally don't have a lot of friends. I'm not a very social person. I don't go out to bars and drinking or anything, right? So having people that are as obsessed about horses as you are is really satisfying.
Yeah.
Totally. And just being able to like talk about things and share tips and people looking up to you or looking up to other artists that are incredible. Like that's so satisfying to me. And that's, I think, what drives it a lot too, is being able to be a part of something, right? Instead of just saying I'm making art, but it's like selling for money or whatever. It's like, no, we're a community and we'll stand up for each other if someone is not feeling well or even like personal things in their life are going wrong. Like there's someone out there that will be willing to help you because they like your art and we're all connected with model horses.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that I love too.
Yeah. And I think my least favorite comes from that standpoint of that there's a few odd people that are not as involved in the community and they're a little more commercial almost, and they're not willing to share or help or let you in. And that really bothers me because I'm like an open book and I'm here to like teach you as much as I know, which isn't a lot, but it's more than maybe you know. And so when I reached out to a couple people and they would kind of say like, no, I can't give you that advice because that would be stealing my like, I don't know, business,
Right.
like whatever secrets, yeah, business secrets. And it's like that turns it very corporate and it's less about a community. Like we're not here to steal your ideas, or if you use that paint, I'm suddenly going to paint as amazing as you, right? Like people just want to know so that they can start themselves. And it's really not stealing your business or losing your customer base. It's just sharing that knowledge and the community with everybody else. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think you know, if a certain artist shares their, you know, trade secrets or whatever, the materials they use, just because someone takes those exact materials doesn't mean that they're going to reproduce something that's, you know, anywhere near what you do. And so that's one of the cool things, I think, is that you could give people the same exact materials and we all have, you know, our unique style. So yeah, I totally agree. There's no reason really to...
Because even if I was to give someone the exact same color palette, the exact same paint, the exact same airbrush and everything and say, paint this horse exactly like I painted it, it would still look slightly different.
Yeah.
Because we all have a unique way of doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it really doesn't matter. So I just don't understand that. That's the one thing that bothers me.
Yeah. And I think that's changing too. I think I've seen a shift in the last few years at least of people are more open about what they do.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah. So do you have any favorite memories in the hobby so far? Again, this could be art related or not.
I think I wrote some down. Memories or
funny moments, you know, things
funny
like that.
moments. Well, I found it kind of amusing when I used to live in the city because I didn't have a vehicle. And I used to buy models like off of Craigslist or Kijiji because there'd be people within the area like selling them. So I remember one time busing like a good 2 hours to go pick up, I don't know, 6 briars that some lady had, and I had to take them in like a grocery bag back on the bus. And another time I remember there was a lady selling some particular horses, and then she said she could only come at like 7 o'clock at night or whatever, and this was in the winter when it got really dark really early. So gave her like a specific address, but it was like beside a park, so not really at my house, and I had to like walk out there in the dark and like meet up this girl in her car. And it looked like a drug deal from the outside probably, but I'm like, just buying some briars.
Oh
so that was pretty funny.
That's amazing.
But I find it really entertaining too when I have people that don't really know anything about the hobby, my entire bedroom in my parents' house is just walls of horses. I'm sure you've seen it on my YouTube channel. And it's really fun taking people in there because people like know I like horses, but then they're like, but do you know that she really likes horses? Like, this is like 400 models horses. And so they come into my room and they're like, oh my God, you're insane.
Yeah, I enjoy that reaction too.
Yeah, that's pretty satisfying. And I think just telling people like I paint model horses, and then they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, and they sell for enough to like basically be full-time, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
It's crazy. What are you talking about? So
Totally.
I don't know, just lots of reactions, I guess, I find amusing. And then the silly things that we do to support the hobby and be weird about the hobby. Like, I always wonder, I'm renting a house right now and I'm in the studio as we speak, and if my landlord was to ever come down and like look at what we're doing, he would probably be like, what the heck is going on in my house?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
What was it like when your boyfriend first found out what you did? Were you like open about it the whole time, or like what was his reaction? Because I know he's supportive now.
He is supportive now. I was like, because I met him in school, and when I was in school, I wasn't very vocal about it, and I wasn't very involved because I was just too busy with university and everything. So I didn't share it with a lot of my friends. I was more like embarrassed about it, self-conscious about it, like keep it hidden, and they don't really need to know that I'm weird. And then when I started working, it came out more. But when I met him, he really didn't react at all. He kind of was just like, oh, you really like horses and you have a lot of them. Okay, cool. He was a little concerned though when we did move in together. He said, can you leave him at your parents until we actually buy a house? Because that's like a lot to move into a rental suite.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, it's fine. So, but now he's really supportive, and like we work together and collaborate, which is super awesome. Having cool looking bases for your models, like that's super cool. It's a whole other realm, and I hope to do more projects with him on like a larger scale of actually making big dioramas and stuff. So it's pretty awesome that he is so supportive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Has he always like done that like on his own, and then you guys just like, he's helped you obviously with the bases, but
yeah, well, he started a couple years ago as well. He hasn't been doing it that long. It was kind of the same thing as models for me. He stumbled into it and fell in love instantly. So originally he was just making, models for himself that were unique and creative and an outlet for him. And then when I showed him that he could make bases for the model community, he was like, oh, and then there was traction on his Instagram account as well from model people being like, hey, can you make a base for me? So I've kind of converted him into like the horse side of things.
He's got people in his DMs going, please make me a base.
Yeah, and he's always like, oh, all of my followers are your horse people.
That's awesome. So you mentioned your workspace, and I think anybody who's watched your videos has at least an idea of what that looks like, but walk me through what that's like for you now. Have you always had a dedicated space? Things like that.
Well, when I started as a teenager, I actually did have a whole desk in my bedroom when I wasn't super committed to models, and it was always just kind of there, but it ended up just being like a desk that I would throw random stuff on, and it wasn't super concentrated. When I really got into customizing in the city there, it was difficult because I was renting, and I've always been renting, so I don't have a ton of space per se. But that rental suite was arranged in a way that there was a little tiny nook that my roommate didn't need, and I was like, well, can I take it over? And so she was like, sure. And it started just on like a TV tray in that corner with my big newer ring light that I had as a light, and just pasteling in that little corner. And then eventually I said, okay, I need an actual desk when I get an airbrush. And there just happens to be like people would leave furniture in the alley all the time. And there was this really nice big desk that was for free in the alley. So we hauled it into my house. And I was going to wreck it anyways with clays and paint. So I'm like, oh, it's free, might as well. Back in with my parents, they gifted me a bedroom in the basement. So it was the same desk. And Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I started to lose you for a second there.
Okay. It said connection unstable, but it's back now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's like the video's a little bit off from the audio, but I think you're at least back with audio.
Okay. Okay. So I moved into my parents' house. They gifted me the basement spare bedroom, and that was the same desk. And then I had a little shelf for all my supplies, but it was pretty small as well. And it was the desk for everything. And then when I moved in with my boyfriend, we found a 2-bedroom apartment, and that was very special. So he has his workstation in the studio as well as my workstation. But now I have 3 separate desks, which is amazing. So I have one for sculpting, one for painting, and one for drumming. And then of course, like extra shelf for storage. So I like having a little more room, but you can always create in a tiny space too. Like a lot of people just work off a TV table, right? So,
Yeah.
But it is definitely nice to have a dedicated room and a dedicated space that I can like close the door and it's like it's working time.
Yeah, exactly. You can close it off afterwards too and have that separation.
Exactly. And you can make it as messy as you want and no company will see it.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah, and you're able to Dremel in there too, which is awesome because like I go outside to do mine and it's like weird because my neighbors probably think I'm so crazy out there with like a lot of horse parts and just Dremeling in the driveway.
Well, it's a hard thing because I'm not sure you're supposed to Dremel inside. Like it's very messy.
Yeah.
But I struggle to find a solution until I have my own house because we also have really cold winters here where it drops to about -30. So I can't have like even an airbrush ventilation out the window because it won't, like the house won't heat enough if that window's open and like air is coming through. So I run a purifier and like I have a smoke trap and stuff, but I'm not sure it's the best or the healthiest solution, but I don't know. We'll have to figure it out when I actually have my own place.
Yeah. So as far as like mediums and tools that you use, obviously we've mentioned airbrushing, but do you have any other favorite things that you like to use?
I am obsessed with the Winsor and Newton Kolinsky Sable Series 7 paintbrushes. Those will save your life because, you know, when you see people's pictures of these horses that are hair by hair painted, I'm like, how do they do that? And so I finally like caved and paid the $23 it is for the single paintbrush or whatever. And it is 100% worth it. It's worth every penny because you can get those fine details there and it's like a real hair so that it just works so nice. I like paying money when it's something that actually works decently.
Oh yeah.
And that is one of them.
Yeah. Totally.
I found that Vallejo Model Air is like the best airbrush paint that you can get. A lot of people start with golden just because it's more well known, but Vallejo has amazing colors and they're really easy to just put right into the airbrush and it's a very matte consistency, which I like working with. So those are some of my favorite paints. Just looking around my studio. Vallejo. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty standard. I don't really use anything too fancy. I like using Magic Sculpt and Epoxy Sculpt for different things. They work very differently in the consistency, and I've noticed that one is better for certain things than the other. Sealing spray, I really like Tester's Dull Coat. Some people are off of that because they don't like the consistency. They said they changed the formula. I've never had an issue with it, so I really liked using it. And basically just going with brand name Dremel bits. Don't even bother with the Amazon garbage. They shred in like 5 seconds. You have to get Dremel brand. I've learned that the hard way.
Yep, me too. Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite or least favorite scale to work in?
Ooh, I like all of them.
Yeah.
I really like micros because they're impressive when you take pictures of them and they're blowing up on the screen and it's like, like it's an okay paint job. It's got a few little flaws in there. And then when you actually look at it in your china cabinet, you're like, it's really tiny.
Yeah.
And as of recent, I've been really obsessed with traditional scale, just because you can get more detail crammed in there and you can sculpt it better. Because for a long time I was working in stablemate scale and I haven't been doing that nearly as much. I definitely like the traditional more, and starting to gravitate into the resin world as well. But I'll paint anything. I like all of them. Classic is kind of a good in-between too, when you're not feeling too crazy or too tiny.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Let me pull up the questions here because I keep track of what I've asked you and what I haven't. Okay. So, what would your top tips be for artists that are looking to get to where you are, whether it's sculpting or painting?
My number one piece of advice is you just have to start. Like, I can tell you tips till I'm blue in the face, but until you actually like go out, buy a stablemate, a can primer, and like try these things for yourself, you're never gonna learn what works and what doesn't work. And you won't get to that point if you're not being risky and just trying it. Like, go out and buy an airbrush, go out and buy oil paints, like just try it, because you don't know until you do.
Yeah.
Of course, like following tutorials is really helpful because that will guide you in the right direction of like which product is going to work better for you at the end. So like I would recommend watching a lot of YouTube tutorials or looking at blog posts. Like Braymere Saddlery has a lot of really good tutorials on there. That's kind of where I started learning. Post your progress on Instagram, see what other people have to say. I know staring at your own piece of work, you can get very stale and not really see what's wrong with it. So post it and say like, what is wrong with it? And don't take the criticism as like, oh my God, you're a terrible artist. Take it and put it into that piece of work and grow from it, right? Like, we're not trying to be mean to you guys.
Right. Yeah.
We're trying to encourage you to get better, and a different eye might see a different thing, and a more experienced artist may say that's not anatomically correct, or that can't actually happen in the real horse genetic world of color, right? So taking that critique and actually fueling it into your work is really helpful. And I had one more thing, and ask questions. So go to your favorite artist and ask them questions. Like, I am a super annoying artist. I go to all the good people like Kylie Parks and Raven Maddock, and I'm always pestering them like,
Yes.
How do you do this? How are you so good at this? I feel like I'm super annoying, but that's how you learn, and that's how you find like what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and how you grow as an artist yourself. And just following them, even in being inspired by their work, that's super important, is following the greats and saying like, what are they doing? Like, really study what they're doing and then put it into your own work.
Yeah, those are great tips. Especially with the critique one too. I think so many people can like get really like offended if people are, now obviously if you're on there and like bashing people, that's one thing, but like so many people want to give constructive criticism, and if you want to get better, that's like the only way really, is like you gotta be able to take it. And I think sometimes people get even more insecure if like, you know, say they might think something's off about the neck that they've done, and then they put it out there kind of maybe hoping people will just validate that it's good.
Yeah.
And then people like point out the things you notice and you're like, ugh, but like that's good because then you'll learn from it.
Yeah. But my thought too is you want to post it while it's still in progress. So you don't finish the whole thing, sink like 40 hours into it, and then post it like you said, and then people being like, ooh, like the ears are way too far forward, like that doesn't look right at all. And then it's like, well, now it's a finished piece and I don't want to go back and like strip it and like fix the ears. You want to fix the ears when it's in the epoxy phase. And I definitely had that too. I posted my own work and people were like, man, the ears, like they're not right. And I'm like, I was a little bit butthurt about it because I'm like, I think I'm fine. Like, I know what I'm doing. And then I was like, no, really, I should fix the ears, because same thing, you're going to finish that piece and it's always going to bother you. You're always going to see it and other people are going to see it too. So fix it while you can.
Totally.
Is my philosophy.
Otherwise it'll just sit on your shelf eating you alive.
Yeah. Or I guess you could just sell those pieces. I usually sell the ones that like bother me.
True. Yeah, that's a good method too. Make a little money, sell the ones you don't like. Let's see. Getting towards the last half here. Last quarter. This is a big question, but what's one thing you'd like to see more of in the hobby?
I was thinking about this for a while, actually. I think that the hobby is great and it's getting a lot better, but I find that there's not a lot of international exposure and inclusion. So like Briar, and I know like I've emailed Briar about this, but there's like the best customs contest, and Canadians or Europeans or anybody from anywhere other than the US can't enter. And it kind of sucks because I don't feel like that's like taking the whole hobby and saying mine is the best custom. It's not, because it's the best custom in the US, right? Like we have Russia, which is incredible artists that are not even being like noticed on Briar's radar or Mares in Black's radar or like any of these like main hobby resources, right? And I think there's a lot of talent that's being untapped and they're just not being noticed because they're not from the States per se.
Yeah, I totally
and
agree.
and I've been finding that like even with like Mares in Black, they're an amazing podcast. I love listening to them, but it's a lot of the same names coming up, and at the Briar shows it's a lot of the same names. And when you like see the custom world as a whole, it's like it's the same people at the top, and it's like, well, they're amazing and they deserve to be there, but that's in America. Like there is the same happening in Russia and in Europe and in Canada and like all over the world, right? So I think just having it more nation or global in the grand scheme of things, and that's probably partially due to me being from Canada. I don't get to be involved in a lot of things.
Yeah, no, it totally sucks. I think Briar could be doing a lot more to show the love towards the international people, because you're right, there's so much talent out there that isn't recognized as much. Yeah, I totally agree. I would love to see a shift there. And maybe Online Briar Fest is like the very inklings of the beginnings of that, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I know that they legally can't like give out prizes. There was something about that. Like it's law-based. It's not that they don't want to, but it's laws regarding. But I feel like I've been thinking about it too, of like having some kind of global scale competition where like it maybe wasn't sponsored by Briar, but sponsored by everybody, so that we can have like the best in the world kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that would be so cool.
So
I'd love to see that. Yeah. So what does the hobby mean to you? What makes it special? Getting deep.
It's getting deep. It means a lot, and I think that just comes from growing up an artist. It's really hard to find your place. Like everybody, like I think it's the same in singing. Like everybody sings, right? And everybody draws or everybody paints. So finding your niche where you stand out and like you feel accomplished and you feel like people recognize your work and they go, oh, that's a piece by her because she has this unique style. So I sort of had that with traditional art, but not really. It never really went anywhere, and it was kind of just a side fun hobby. And I guess when I started with models, it was a lot more intense and it was a lot more recognition, and it was a place where I could paint horses and nobody would be like judging me for it, I guess.
Yeah.
And you get to be like obsessed with horses, and that's like the most perfect thing. It's horses and it's art and it's physical, and it just, I don't know, I feel like I found my place, and a lot of people, they take a long time to find that place. So I feel like really satisfied at this point in my life that like this is actually going somewhere and I'm being recognized and people know my name and I'm like growing to the top, and that's just really, really cool for me personally.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So.
Yeah, congratulations first of all, because that's just such an amazing
Thanks.
feeling. So what are your future goals? This could be short term or long term.
So I guess the main goal would be to do this full time, take this full time, just because the YouTube channel has been going really well. And I think that could get to a point where not necessarily even just model tutorials, but more art tutorials, like how do you draw horses, like involved with horses, or like just in general, the art supplies that you use, like more on the airbrush or more on paints and acrylic and more on painting oils, or just in general, like expanding that YouTube channel. Obviously continuing to grow and improve my work. I'd love to get more into original sculpture and resin casting and medallion casting and all that, because I find that really neat. But it's very hard, so I'm not quite there yet. And yeah, I guess just keep going and keep growing it, and hopefully getting to a point where like it is self-sustaining and I could do this, full time. And I feel like that's really unique, as I get older, because eventually I do want kids. And if I could work from home on models while I have kids, like that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
to be able to still make money.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. I'm sure you'll get there, because you're already well on your way. Exciting. So unless there's something else that we haven't talked about that you want to share, I like to always leave that on the table, in case I missed something in the questions.
I don't think so. We've pretty much gone through it all.
Yeah. I like to turn this last little bit over to you. Plug your work. Where can people find you? What can they be looking forward to?
Okay. So you can follow me pretty much everywhere at DeeJayBe Studios. So that is on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I have a website as well, which is www.deejaybe.com, and that has like all of my art. So you can find my traditional drawing, my painting, model customs, commission information, pretty much everything there. I hope to actually start very soon some merch, so some DeeJayBe t-shirts. That's in the works, and some stickers and fun stuff. I also have been I got a really good response to my recent traditional painting, so I'm hoping that I can eventually get into selling prints of that kind of work as well. And then of course, like we said, medallions and original sculptures, hopefully in the future at some point.
Awesome.
And this summer, I'm planning on doing a lot of sales. So I have a lot of sales pieces coming up. I've been kind of building my inventory, and now I think I'm ready to part with some of them. So those will be available very soon. And then just otherwise just following my Instagram mostly, because that's where I post everything that's happening and everything that's new and exciting. So
Sweet. Yeah, definitely check it out if you're not already. I know I've been a long time follower, but yeah, that's awesome.
Oh.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and being on the show.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. This is so cool. I think this is going to be really great for the hobby, just to get to know everybody.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, that was the episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I will leave the links below so that you can go ahead and check out Darynn and all of her lovely work. You're definitely going to want to stay tuned for what's next to come with her. If you want to keep up with me and the show in the hiatus between season 2 and season 3, definitely go ahead and follow my Instagram. It's Frost Studios Equine Art. I post lots of behind the scenes, not only for the show, but behind the scenes of my studio in general, so you're definitely going to want to go ahead and follow me on there. Thank you again to every single artist, all 20 of my artists for the first 2 seasons. Thank you for your patience with me and the scheduling of the interviews. Thank you for donating your time and your wisdom to share with my audience, and it's just been amazing, the response that I had from this. I wasn't sure exactly how many people would be open to sharing their little studio lives and their model horse lives with me, so thank you to each and every one of you who were a guest on the first 2 seasons of Artists Unlocked. And thank you again, finally, to all of my lovely viewers, anybody who's shared the post, anybody who's interacted with, or even if you're just a passive viewer, thank you for tuning into this little dream of mine. And I will see you guys in season 3.